Can you start, please?
So, welcome to everybody to this parallel session on use of open source tools and innovative methodologies for public and green space assessment and strategies. My name is Peter Gotsch. I'm professor at the Norwegian University of Science Technology, and I have the pleasure and the honor to moderate this session. I will show you some overview of our program. So you have joined this session on use of open source tools and innovative methodologies for public and green space assessment and strategies. This session has set out the following objectives, as you see, to introduce to local government stakeholders and civil society the various innovative tools, methodologies, and approaches for effective assessment, planning, and implementation of green and public spaces, to discuss selected case studies and experiences surrounding the developing and implementation of citywide green public space plans and use of urban technology to shape urban form and places, and to develop a greater understanding among policymakers, practitioners, research institutions about the relationship between network of green spaces for climate resilience and inclusive green recovery from COVID-19. There is a list of lead questions. I will not read out all of them in detail, but we will return to these lead questions during our panel discussion, and they probably also come up through some of your feedback and questions. So what is on the agenda for the next little bit less than 90 minutes? So as mentioned, I am the moderator of the session. We will have key inputs by Jose Chong, who is head of Global Public Space Program UN Habitat. He will talk about using citywide public space assessment tool to assess climate change and integrate natural-based solutions. We will have Dr. Rumana Sultana from the Center for Sustainable Development, University of Liberal Arts, Bangladesh, who will talk about resident perception of the role and management of green public spaces to provide cultural ecosystem services. And I also want to mention that Sultana and the Center for Sustainable Development is hosting this entire session. Thanks again for that. Then we will have Mr. Juba Rashid from ICLEI in South Asia, in Bangladesh, and he will talk about use of GIS in open green space planning in Rajasthan, in Rashani. And not least, we will have Dr. Trudy Papp, who is a mycologist and forest pathologist from the University of Pretoria, about the use of innovative technologies to combat an invasive tree pest case study from Johannesburg. After those keynote presentations, where we can also clarify some basic questions, we will open the round, a bigger round of question and answer and discussion. This can last up to 30 minutes or 25 minutes, and we will conclude with a wrap up and conclusion. So we look forward for the session, and I will introduce the first speaker. The moderator should not take so extensively long. So I'm welcoming Jose Chong, who is leading the Global Public Space Program at the Planning, Finance, Economy section of UN Habitat. He guides the development of new tools for public space assessment, citywide strategies, and applies innovative methodologies for community participation and collaborative urban design. So, dear Jose, welcome to the floor, and I hand over to you. Many thanks.
Thanks a lot, Peter, for the presentation, and thanks to other partners to join us to this interesting session. My name is Jose Chong, as Peter was saying, and I will be presenting our experience of the use of the citywide public space assessment tool to address climate change and integrated based solutions. I wanted to start this presentation about the importance of digital technologies, particularly like for social inclusion. Here, you can see like some data of the accessibility to internet like for different areas, in this case, developed countries and less developed countries. So it's like you can see like there is more accessibility to internet in developed countries, no? Like and there is a big percentage, a big gap that we still need to address. But what has demonstrated COVID-19 and actually like a different crisis, that digital technologies can have a potential like to support inclusion in communities. And COVID-19 can be an accelerator to digital transformation. We have seen like for instance, like this event that is focused on innovation, that is like now everyone is connected online. So a quick brief of the Global Public Space Program from UN Habitat. We started in 2012. And it's like basically what we are focusing is to produce policy guides, capacity building with local governments and partners, knowledge sharing, and carry out advocacy work and technical cooperation. In this year, like we have supported like an upgrade around more than 130 public spaces. We have conducted 30 citywide assessments, and this is a tool that I will show you during my presentation. We have engaged around 20,000 communities and people who in participatory workshops, and we have calculated that in in our intervention we have around 1.8 million beneficiaries. So you can find like more information here in the website. But basically today I wanted to focus about the importance of citywide assessment, or the importance like to know what is the status of open spaces and green spaces in your cities. So we have produced a series of tools. So it's like this is the one that we are going to talk about during this session. But also you're welcome like to see our website and to find out more information about all the range of tools that we have available for free, where you can go like from a site-specific assessment, upgrading of projects, or even like using games like a tool for community participation in the case of block by block and Minecraft. So I wanted to start this session like with the importance of citywide public space assessment. And actually this started in 2015 like with a request like from Nairobi City like to support them on a citywide strategy on public space in Nairobi. So but the first question that we ask is like if you have an inventory of that network of open spaces in Nairobi. So basically they didn't have, like they have like some information, but it's like not a comprehensive information about where the public spaces and open spaces were in their city, but also they didn't have information about the quality of the public space. So I think like that is the main reason that we start to develop this methodology, like to help, like to gather information, but also to analyze that information and to propose like some policy directions on the improvement of open spaces and green spaces in their city. So what we are using is open source technologies. We asked actually like with colleagues, UN Habitat host the Global Urban Observatory, and other systems agencies, they were using, for instance, some open source tools. One of them is Kobo Toolbox, and this is one of the main tools that we are using. This is developed by the Harvard Humanitarian Initiative with support of USAID, and it's also used like, by UN OCHA. But basically, this is an ecosystem where allow you like to capture information on the status and to create a digital survey. So it's like you can download an app, you go to the field, you take some pictures, you record the sound in the space, but also it is related to a server that then it's like you can analyze, do a quick analysis of the information that you collect. So basically, this is a technology that we are using. We are combining this with other tools, for example, QGIS, or we can use ArcGIS also, and other apps like to help us like to map, for instance, like the how many users pass by the public space, or like the decibels that we can hear in the open space. So why this is important, and this is an exercise that is like we are basically doing two things. In like what we are is assessing the quantity of public space that we have in our cities, and this is particularly important when we are facing like a rapidly growing cities, particularly in Africa and Asia. And it's like it's important to know how many meters of open space and green space do you have in your cities. This is some examples, for example, in Gaza Strip, or in Afghanistan, where we did conducted like this kind of exercise. And this is something actually that is supporting the SDG, or the Sustainable Development Goal 11.7, that is focusing on open public space. So it's like the target is like by 2030 that we need to provide universal access to safe, inclusive, and accessible green and public spaces, in particular for women and children, older persons, and persons with disabilities. So basically what happened when we gather this information, and we have like now a database of more than 900 cities around the world, and it's like we try like to balance like the different typologies of cities, is that we can see like a great disparities in terms of accessibility to open spaces. No, so it's like you can see, for instance, some regions like in Eastern and Southeastern Asia, that is like only 26% of the population can access like to an open public space by 5 minutes walk or 400 meters, and other in Latin America, for instance, like almost half of the population have like accessibility to an open public space. And this is something that if you go even like in the city, it's like you will have like a great inequalities in terms of accessibility to open public spaces. This is also some statistics. The percentage actually of the land that is allocated to street and open spaces. So it's like what we are combining is like these two information. In average, is quite low. It's like only 16% of the area in the city is allocated to both streets and open spaces. No, and you can see like that disparity like between the different regions. So another issue that is quite important is like that we can capture like when we are doing like this exercise with satellite images is like to assess the quality of public space. And this is something that actually what we need to do is like to send surveyors to the ground. And this tool allow you like to send surveyors to the ground and like to map and to assess the condition of open spaces. So it's like this is pictures like from some exercise that we did. And why this is important, because it's like what we can measure when we send the quality, like for instance, the level of accessibility that they have and the quality of the infrastructure that allows this accessibility, the network of public spaces, and also this is important, like for instance, like to gather information about access, use, comfort, amenities, safety, and green coverage. So the methodology is quite simple. As you can see, like there is only like 4 main steps, and this step is like to go like to a pre-filled work. So it's like basically like we gather the local governments, communities, and also other partners working on public space, like to get all the information that we can get like from the network of open spaces in a city. We do data collection, so we send surveyors to the ground, and then it's like through the information that we get from the server, it's like we analyze that data and provide a report that is like is focusing on the recommendations and the policies that the city should focus in order like to improve the system of open spaces in their territories. So on the indicators that we are using is basically we are at a citywide level. It's like we are analyzing spatial accessibility, the quantity, local and spatial distribution, environmental and biodiversity, and a network of spaces. So it's like we have around 140 possible questions about quality of public space. And what we do is like normally like we customize the survey depending on the context. In certain contexts, for instance, like they have asked us like, to focus on women and girls. In certain contexts, like they have asked us like, to focus more on safety. In others is like, for example, in green areas in the city. At a site level, what we are focusing is, for instance, in access, use, comfort, facilities, and green coverage. And this is quite important because now we are entering like to an understanding of what is the necessities that a space needs like to be upgraded. No, so this is a first layer. And normally, what we do is we complement this with a site-specific assessment where we do a more comprehensive analysis where we send to the surveyors during the weekdays, during the weekends, and then it's to understand and we do interviews, focus groups, and it's like exploratory works to understand the situation of a specific space. So I will end up this presentation. This is as an opening presentation for this session. It's after the work that we have been that started in 2016 Nairobi in 2015. It's now we have more than 34 cities that has conducted this citywide public space assessment. One of the interesting examples, one of the last one, for instance, was the collaboration with the Inter-American Development Bank in 3 cities in Latin America, in Santo Domingo, in Monteria, and Montevideo, because it was interesting to analyze the differences that you have on terms of quality of public space in different size of and different typologies of cities. But also in the case of Ethiopia, we are conducting that in 6 cities. And basically what we are getting from the information is what we are going to do is to improve the national policy on public space in the case of Ethiopia. So it's scaling up more from the understanding of what are the characteristics of your open public space in a system in your city, more to also changing the national regulations regarding public spaces. So I think in general, what we have seen after this experience, that evidence-based policies are necessary in order to have improvement of the network of public space in your cities. But also that is important that it's there are available open source tools. So this is something that, for instance, a methodology you can download it online, and it's even the tool and the methodology are free available for everyone for use. So please let us know if you would like some support, more information, and we are open to support you to gather information on the quality of public space in your cities. Thanks a lot.
Many thanks, Jose. Just a message to the audience: if you have important question for clarification, we might take 1 or 2 questions now. If not, we will proceed, and a general discussion will come later. So let me introduce the second speaker. This is Rumana Sultana. She's a social ecological researcher, experience in working at different aspects of environmental governance, urban management, natural resource conservation, climate change adaptation. She is assistant professor at the Center for Sustainable Development, University of Liberal Arts in Bangladesh, and her research includes sustainable urban green space management, building social ecological resilience, and climate risk reduction strategies exploration. I hand over to you, Sultana. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Professor Peter, for introducing me very nicely. And thank you all for joining this session. Bear me for a moment. I'm just starting the slideshow. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone, for joining this session. I'm Rumana Sultana, and today I will present on residents' perception of the role and management of green spaces to provide cultural ecosystem services in Dhaka, Bangladesh. And you can see the background picture of Dhanmondi Lake, which is in South Dhaka City Corporation. And one of my students captured this picture during the data collection process. So to green space, specifically urban green spaces means urban parks, then rooftop gardens or any kind of community gardens or street side greeneries. And cultural ecosystem services is one kind of ecosystem services. As we know, ecosystem services means the benefits we usually receive from the ecosystem, and cultural ecosystem services are the non-materialistic one. So if I exemplify it, then I can talk about recreation. Then if someone use green space for social meetings, social cohesion, and also green spaces can be used for some sorts of aesthetic experiences and mental satisfaction, and even for religious and spiritual purposes. And all those kind of services are considered as cultural ecosystem services. So as we know, in the world, more than half of the population live in cities, and this number is expected to increase in 2050 by 70%. And in Bangladesh, the number is a bit lower here, around 40% of the residents are living in urban areas. And as already the first speaker mentioned, green spaces are really considered as very essential for sustainable urban development. But unfortunately, urban development in Bangladesh, not only in Dhaka city, but also for other cities, are quite unplanned and unorganized. And as a result, the green spaces are not properly accessible or may not be well appreciated. So we were trying to see the previous works, so why the green space management didn't work well. And then we see that most of the urban green space development were dependent on economic feasibility of the initiative, or people think about the accessibility to green space. But most of these are planned based on experts' opinion, but there is a quite difference between experts' opinion and layperson opinion. So through our research, we aim to understand how local peoples are thinking about cultural ecosystem services provided by the urban green spaces. And also we try to explore how their social and economic background influence their perception. So to attain this objective, we tried to answer several questions. So firstly, we tried to answer what importance do the urban residents place on the aspect of green spaces. Then we tried to explore what characteristics of the resident are associated with their perception. And finally, we tried how the green spaces can most effectively be managed. So here you can see our study area, which is located in Zone 1 of Dhaka South City Corporation. And we selected this area because residents living in this area are quite privileged with their access to green space. Because if you see the Google map of Dhaka City, you can see many green spaces around these areas. So we think that residents from this area will be able to tell us about their genuine perception of the green spaces. So we did 405 questionnaire surveys, and it was a random sampling, and the collected data were analyzed statistically, and open source statistical softwares like SOFA statistics were used for this analysis. And here you can see the socio-demographic background of the respondent, and 56% of them were male and the rest were female. And there was also a higher percentage of young respondents in their participation. And three kind of family status were explored: nuclear, extended, and single. And 80% of the respondents were educated. So here you can see that how importance they pose on green space-based cultural ecosystem services, and they think that green spaces are mostly important for recreational services, and also they think aesthetics experiences and sense of place are also some important cultural ecosystem services. But they feel that cultural heritage and natural awareness kind of services are less important in terms of Dhaka city's green spaces. Then we asked them which space they prefer for what kind of services. And most of them talk about green park, and they feel that green park can provide mental satisfaction. They can use that park for sense of place and recreational activities. At the same time, they also appreciated the role of rooftop gardens in providing mental satisfaction, natural awareness, and aesthetic experiences. However, there are less importance of gardens in terms of educational purposes. Then we tried to explore what kind of activities are mainly associated with green space, and we tried to see the difference between the opinion from the respondents from different socio-demographic background. And the mostly needed or mostly appreciated activities were walking and nature observation. And we can see that respondents who live single, not in a family, prefer to use green spaces for games and sports. And also respondents who were teenage or below 20 years old prefer to use green space for games and sports. And similarly for social meeting, also we saw there was a higher participation of single respondent to use the green spaces for social meeting and to attain social cohesion. And then we asked them what factors actually limits their utilization of green spaces. And here we see that too many people, lack of free time, insufficient infrastructure, and lack of sense of security, as well as lack of organized events, limit their access or demotivated them to use green spaces. And here we can see that single respondents find lack of sense of security as a factor of not visiting the green spaces. So same thing we found for the female respondents. They opine that lack of security make them not to visit the green spaces, specifically those places which are a bit dark and usually remain less crowded. On the other hand, male respondents feel that crowd make them not visit the green space. So there is a diverse opinion from diverse group of people. Then we tried to explore the correlation among 10 categories of cultural ecosystem services. And we found that there is a strong correlation between natural awareness, religious and spiritual services, and cultural heritage. So we can say that if one space can provide these three kind of services together, then that will work well. At the same time, we find some negative correlation between natural awareness and recreation. That might be the reason or the true scenario of Dhaka city, because here most of the places provide recreational services and natural awareness kind of services at the same time, but respondent usually don't like to get these two services from the same place. And when we asked them about the management of green space, and they opine that government can better manage those spaces, and also they acknowledge their role is important, but finally they think that collaboration between individual beings, between government, between INGOs and NGOs can be the most effective way to manage urban green spaces. So in conclusion, I'd like to say that if the urban planners would like to plan a green space or any green spaces for urban areas in Bangladesh, they should consider a place for walking and some space for nature observation, because residents want green spaces to have this kind of facilities. And also we see that respondents' limitations were not only related to their personal issues like lack of leisure time, lack of sense of security, but also there are so many space-related issues that limited their motivation to use the green space. And female respondent felt less secured in the green spaces. So security should be addressed very carefully when we are planning for a green space. Especially we should consider about the female residents. And also the respondents acknowledge that green spaces currently can satisfy their individual needs, but these spaces are really less important for meeting the need of the wider community, like environmental development. And also there is some divergence in the perception, as we see that young respondents prefer green space for active recreation, like games and sports, and older respondents like those spaces for passive recreational activities. So we recommend the urban planners to plan green space either dedicated for active recreational activities are dedicated for passive recreational activities. So we should not plan a place in combination because that might decrease the value of that space to the resident. And finally, we really need collaboration between different agencies to make the urban planning process or initiative successful and sustainable. And at the end, I'd like to say that CS is the most comfortable way to make the residents feel the stewardship. They can feel themselves related to the green space, and ecosystem service approach was previously acknowledged as the doorway to sustainable urban development. So this may be the reason why the urban development strategies didn't work that well previously. So presently, I request the policymakers and urban planners to integrate cultural ecosystem services in the policy and planning to build a sustainable urban development in the cities of Bangladesh. Thank you so much for your kind attention. And here I also wrote my email address. So if you want me to reach anytime, you can reach me through this address. And also your questions are quite, I'm ready to answer your question here too. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sultana, also for keeping the time so well, also for Jose. So I'm going to introduce our next keynote input, and this is by Yuber Rashid. He is an urban planner and has expertise on urban development and climate resilience planning. And he worked in both government, non-government organizations and has wide engagement with the local government institution in Bangladesh for more than 13 years. Currently at ICLEI South Asia, he is managing the Bangladesh country office and coordinating projects in various cities in Bangladesh. So welcome to the floor, and I hand over to you, Yuber.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Peter, for a nicely introduction of me. So as Mr. Peter said, my name is Mohammad Yuber Rashid, working at ICLEI South Asia. Basically, I sit in Dhaka, but we're looking for some projects in different cities, including Rajshahi and as well as in Dhaka. So I was listening to presentations of Jose and Ms. Rumana Sultana, and was thinking how to link my presentation in the upcoming what I will say. So basically, today I will talk about the technology use in of green open space planning, particularly in a western city in Bangladesh, which is Rajshahi. So I will talk and link on the technology like geographic information system and how we have used the technology in green open space planning. So let me share a brief background of the project. Based on that, I will say today, the project was a pilot in under the larger project, which is accelerating climate action through the promotion of urban low emission development strategies, and which is phase 2 and implemented by in partnership with the local government for sustainability and UN Habitat. So the pilot baseline assessment of floral wealth in the city and developing open green space in Rajshahi was one of the pilots that we identified under the urban-led projects. through a long-term climate vulnerability and risk assessment, and as well as technical inputs for improving the biodiversity situation in Ras Shahid. The project, we have considered activities under this pilot project, like we did the detailed inventorizations and the diversity of the different plants. We developed GIS-based tree maps for some important representative area in the city. We developed spatial database of different trees to understand their diversity and their characteristics, like heights and the floral diversity, their seasons, etc. As we and not
Hello, Hubert. We might be losing your voice.
Oh, now am I clear?
It is back now. Maybe you can repeat what you said in the last 20 seconds.
Sorry, my apologies. Maybe I was disconnected for connection.
The last 30 seconds.
Okay, now my screen is visible.
Yes,
okay.
Your screen is there.
Okay, sure. Thank you. So as I was saying, that Ras Shahid as a city is renowned as a green city and clean city, not in the country like Bangladesh. It is also renowned as a clean city within the world. Because of the geographic characteristics, the city has lots of water bodies. The city has lots of vegetations. The city has lots of, there is a large river Podda, which is on the western part of the river. That's why the people are getting a fresh air in sometimes. But due to the geographic location, we identified that the city falls within the drought prone because of the marine undulations and the hydrological conditions. So we did, under the Urban Lakes project, we did a climate risks and vulnerability assessment throughout the city, and we found that biodiversity is one of the most fragile, climate change impacted urban systems, as well as including the other urban systems like water supply, like economy. So we found that biodiversity impact in the city all works in the decreasing the ecosystem in terms of the biodiversity losses, in terms of decreasing the number of trees. So in the map, you can see that we wanted to show that there are in total 30 wards in the city. All the 30 wards are impacted by biodiversity losses. So before going to develop the green open space plan for the city, we understand that there are some use of technology, as well as some assessment through survey, through focus group discussions, through taking public perceptions one-to-one. So for creating the existing information on existing trees, we have considered using the GIS to develop detailed documentations so that we can understand their diversity. We have developed GIS-based tree maps to represent for the representative area, to understand in which area and what kinds of trees are there. We have considered developing the natural asset map for assessing the spatial diversity. And finally, we have undertake the spatial analysis to understand the existing vegetation coverage and which are the available and potential green space for the city. But as I said earlier, apart from this technological assessment, definitely we have conducted some community assessment, engaging community assessment surveys, and conducted some stakeholders and local experts input. So here I will talk about how we have used the GIS for collecting the information on existing trees. We have divided the city into 5 key representative area, like there are some larger parks, there are some larger open fields, there are some major islands where there are which are representing the cities as a prominent green space. So we have divided those area as a grid in the GIS. Then we have to mobilize the survey team. We have initially we have developed a index of potential trees so that the surveyors can check can understand what the type of trees based on the index, and then put the information on the GIS. We have collected the coordinates of the trees through handheld GPS. This handheld GPS, we have used a Garmin HRX handheld device to collect the X and Y coordinates. In some cases, we have collected the coordinates through using mobile. And then finally, we have put the coordinates into GIS and created the shapefile of the trees. Now I will show how we have developed the spatial database of this tree. If you look at the table, this is a sample of a representative area. We have collected, we have put in the scientific name, we have put the local name, usually what people are used to tell, like if I say Orjun is a local name of a Terminala Orjuna. We have put the characteristics like height of this tree, which is here, I mentioned 30 feet. We have identified the diameter of the base of the tree. If I say the Orjun, the tree diameter of the base is 6 feet. And we have identified the status of which is the tree is live or not. We have developed the spatial data for all representative areas. So here is a sample map of the tree distribution maps. If you there is a prominent park which is Kamujaman Park inside the city, the larger vegetation coverage inside the city. If you see the tree distribution map, there are more than 100 trees inside the tree. So based on the GPS data, we have represented in the map that there are this kind of trees and their location and their name. Okay, so as I said, we have developed tree distribution maps. Then we have developed the natural asset maps. For natural asset maps, we have conducted some physical feature and topographic survey, like using the GPS and total stations. And in some cases, we have taken photographs along with the coordinates, and then we put into the GIS file. So here is a sample of the natural asset map of Rajshahi city. This is not the all category, like all land use categories, but this is based on the natural asset focus. As I said, the natural asset is the representation of the blue-green infrastructure inside the city. So we have categorized and calculated the land use as mostly based on green and blue. Green means agriculture, means vegetations, sparse vegetations, green orchard, open ground and park, zoo and other water bodies, as well as the river Padma. So if you look into the table, this is the current status of the natural asset in the city. If you can see, the agriculture is, this total area of the city is around 97 square kilometer. Among 97 square kilometer, around approximately 4% of the agricultural land is there still in the city. In terms of vegetation, dense vegetation there, you can see 1.4%, sparse vegetation is around 4%, and as well as open ground is 2.2%, and water body 3.4%. So here we can get the idea about the existing natural asset and open ground, which is existing in the city. So we have used the GIS technology to identify the existing trees, to identify the diversity of those trees, to identify their location, and through natural asset map, we got the available percentage of open space area. We got the percentage of water bodies, and then we are interpreting this spatial analytical information into the plan. Apart from, as I said, the stakeholder assessment and key inputs from the local experts. Now we are compiling all these informations, and we are developing the final green space plan, which we are expecting which will be ready by end of this month. Then we will hand over the green open space plan to the city corporation, so that the city corporation can integrate this open space plan into their larger development plan for the city. This is our as of now the suitable efforts for the city, and city is very appreciating these initiatives. I hope in the future, if they will be able to integrate this plan into their regular planning, based on the climate risk assessment, the situation will be improved, but it will depend on the implementation. So as I said, it will depend on the implementation. Initially, as of now, we did a pilot demonstration to make them understand that what is your earlier situation for a particular area. If we can demonstrate or plant it, develop a open space like in a green way. So what will be the output? So we did a demonstration. There is a embankment inside a major road, like Kalpana to Talaimari intersection, which is around 13 kilometers long. So there are in total 32 slopes, which is not vertical, but you can say vertical and similar undulation. So there are 32 slopes. We have we conducted a physical features survey to collect their width, length, and undulations. Then we critically analyzed their soil characteristics, and we critically designed three-layer tree plantation, like for shrubs, for canopy, and what kind of trees we can plant here. So based on the plan, we have recently implemented and planted some native, basically mostly focused on the native plants. If you can see in the left here, this was before plantation in the slope area, and after plantation, this is the current situation now. Trees are growing, but it is depending on the monsoon. So now city is saying that yes, we understand what is the contribution of promoting green space. So we are looking forward to the plan. Yeah, thank you.
Many thanks. Given the technical difficulties, it is not a problem that we took slightly longer. It was very interesting, informative presentation. Thank you for that. People started making comments in the chat. That's very nice. We will study the comments, and we will, I think, discuss them after we finish all the presentations, because it's a nice question there for also not only you, but some of the other presenters. So let me introduce the the final speaker, that is Trudy Paap from South Africa. She will present us a slightly different angle from natural science. She's mycologist and forest pathologist with 13 years of experience investigating tree health caused by pests and pathogens in Australia and South Africa. So welcome to the floor, Trudy, and we look forward for your input.
Thanks for that, Peter. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity to be part of this. So I think everyone attending this has a real appreciation of the value and the importance of trees in urban environments, but perhaps something that's less appreciated and less well understood is how vulnerable they can be to the arrival and establishment of damaging invasive tree pests. So biological invasions by pests and pathogens pose a major threat to tree health globally. And trees in urban areas are particularly vulnerable. And this is largely a consequence of globalization and our movement of huge quantities of goods around the world, and with them often wood packing materials, and occasionally present on these packing materials or even the goods themselves are invertebrate pests or microbial organisms that can become damaging agents on trees. And most of these ports or harbours where a lot of these goods travel through or arrive in are located in urban environments. And so the trees in those environments are particularly vulnerable. And in light of this, there's been a move towards monitoring the health of trees in these environments to help with early detection of newly arrived pests. And in particular, plants in botanical gardens are really useful for this sort of monitoring. Botanical gardens often house diverse collection of plants, and they have staff working in those collections on a daily basis. And it really increases our potential to pick up pests soon after their arrival. So we refer to these as sentinels. And the International Plant Sentinel Network has been established as a platform to coordinate information exchange and provide support for sentinel plant research in botanical gardens across the world. And so these really act as an early warning system to help us identify new and emerging pest and pathogen risks. And in 2016, a Sentinel project was initiated in South Africa, funded by South Africa's National Biodiversity Institute. And in 2017, while we were undertaking routine tree health monitoring in the KwaZulu-Natal Botanical Gardens, we detected an invasive alien pest, the polyphagous shothole borer. So this is an ambrosia beetle, and it's native to Southeast Asia. And ambrosia beetles have a symbiotic relationship with fungi, and they carry these fungi around with them, and they're the food source for the beetle. And as the beetle drills into the tree and establishes its tunnels or its galleries, this fungus colonizes the wood tissue, and it sporulates, produces spores inside those wood tissues, which the beetles and their larvae feed on. But one of the issues is that for tree species that have not co-evolved with these insects and these fungi, there's no co-evolved resistance. And so this fungus, or one of the fungal associates, Fusarium uelacea, it actually becomes a damaging disease-causing agent in many susceptible host trees. And so this fungus kills the tissues, and that blocks the transport of water and nutrients throughout the trees, which then leads to branch dieback, and it can lead to death of entire trees where you have highly susceptible hosts. And you can see here like the extent of beetle tunneling and fungal establishment, and the combination of that really weakens the branches, and like I said, it blocks the flow of important nutrients and water. And these trees have become quite hazardous as they can start to drop branches, and that poses a threat to people and infrastructure. But these trees also become a huge source of beetles to surrounding trees. But we soon realized that after discovering the pest, that it was actually already quite well established in the country. So I'm going to shift now to Johannesburg and its urban forest. So it's estimated that there's about 10 million trees present in Johannesburg urban forest, which makes it one of the largest man-made urban forests in the world. And in 2018, following a public awareness campaign, we were alerted to the presence of PSHB in Johannesburg. So this beetle is an incredibly challenging pest to manage, and that's in part because it feeds on a fungus, and the fungus seems to have low host specificity, so it's able to infect and colonize wood tissues of many different host trees. And this gives the beetle a very, very wide host range. And this host range includes a number of native and non-native tree species that make up an important part of the Johannesburg urban forest. But one of the challenges for Johannesburg is that there's not really any data on the species composition within the urban forest. So that makes it difficult to predict the impact this pest will have, and also which areas will be most vulnerable. And a further challenge is presented by the fact that the beetle is very, very small, only about 2 millimeters long. So it often escapes detection until it's already well established and causing quite visible impact. And also, it has an unusual mating system, which means that the arrival of just one single female beetle can lead to the establishment of a new outbreak. And as heavily infested trees start dying, these present a hazard. So these trees need to be managed, and where branches are dying, these will need to be pruned out. But where there's no awareness of the presence of the beetle, this wood is not always necessarily disposed of appropriately. And it's really important that this wood does get disposed of appropriately, because otherwise these beetles can be accidentally spread to new locations. And the beetles can survive in cut wood for many, many months. And the movement of infested firewood is a major, major pathway. But there's a huge dependence on firewood for cooking and heating in the country, which makes it an incredibly challenging pest to manage. So in response to the invasion by this high impact pest, Johannesburg City Parks and Zoo have been engaging with universities and private industry to develop a collaborative response and to implement appropriate management strategies at the municipal level. And the project aims to generate scientific data on the PSHB outbreak in Johannesburg, which will enable the city to refine current management strategies in the hope to reduce impact and further spread. So I'm going to briefly discuss some of the tools that are being used to help this process. We've been engaging with private company CropWatch Africa to develop an app that can be used to monitor PSHB presence or absence, and also severity. And the app is something that's relatively simple to use. So there's a series of drop-down menus that lets you capture the identity of the host tree, and the level of infestation, or if there's no signs of infestation, that can also be captured. And you automatically capture the waypoints for the location, and you can take photos of the entire tree and also symptoms where they're present. And then all the data points that are collected can be visualized on maps, and also summary reports of the data can be put together. And there's also possibilities to build summary charts of the data that's being captured. So this app is being used by researchers, and it can be used by municipal staff to track the spread and to improve our understanding of the host range. And it can also be rolled out to the public as a citizen science reporting app. However, this will require a verification step where someone trained to know what the symptoms of PSHB look like can verify the data point to ensure that there's no false reports. And a remote sensing project has recently been initiated at Wits University in Johannesburg. And a PhD student will be using remote sensing technologies to try and provide insight into the composition of the urban forest canopy. So looking for signatures linked to specific tree species. And this will help predict the extent of the areas that will be impacted, and also where the susceptible trees will be, which will allow greater focus of surveillance efforts. And the project's also aiming to see if remote sensing and drone imaging can be used to detect PSHB infestations by looking for signatures linked to decreased tree vigor as a consequence of the inability for the tree to transport water and nutrients. And Google Street View is actually also emerging as a potential tool that can be used to trace the infestation. So the quality of a lot of the images are actually good enough that on particular tree species, especially smooth bark species, we're able to see signs of beetle attack, and then you're able to trace back through those images to potentially find the point in time where the evidence of that beetle was first visibly evident. So the project's going to incorporate the use of these technologies, and together with data collected from the monitoring app, they're aiming to map the current and predicted impacts of this pest within the city. And this project has many collaborators. I'm not going to mention them all by name, but just to note that we have people from local government, we have people from numerous universities, government departments, and government institutions, as well as private industry. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Trudy. So that was very interesting. We have completed now the presentations of our round of experts, and now we want to start the panel session and also receive questions and comments from the audience. I welcome back Jose, Rumana, Jubair, and Trudy to the panel. And we have received one comment that we could use to start. That was mainly addressed to Ruman, but I do think it's also a viable question or a viable thing to discuss also by other presenters. And that was on the role of participatory approach. So Ruman is suggesting and reminding us that we need a participatory approach in planning to anticipate and incorporate the needs of the people. And I wonder first Jubair, but also then other presenters to explore a bit on that and what role has participation, citizen involvement played in the project, in the technologies, in the instruments and processes that you have presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for explaining it very nicely. And thank you, Stephen, for your nice comment. And we really do feel that a participatory approach is needed, and researchers are going around this area, but still there is rarely any initiative that has been implemented considering this participatory approach, at least I can say for my country. There are some project-driven approach. So basically, project implementers are sometimes adapting ecosystem services for the sake of projects, but still, if you think about the market, because urban development will not sustain if it's not market driven. So if people think about considering the market driven needed and also how to make it sustainable, not only ecologically, but also socially and obviously financially. So if we want to make it sustainable from the three pillars of sustainable development, then we should consider about the residents' need, and we need to incorporate it in planning. But yes, there is a hope that we have some projects that started to consider ecosystem services, as already Zubair mentioned in his presentation, but we expect more from the market-driven organizations where they can initiate these activities, so it will be sustainable and will be beneficial for the development. Thank you.
Thank you, Rumana. May I invite some more responses?
Yes, maybe I can go next. And thanks, Peter, and the person who asked about this question. And I think from UN Habitat, participatory approaches has been always part of the implementation of the projects, and even in the citywide public space assessment. I will go back to our experience in Nairobi for the first time. It was quite interesting. What we did is to send two surveyors to the ground. We did it in 3 persons normally. It was someone from the government, the local government was coordinating. We sent one a student from the academia, and the third person that was involved to do the assessment was from the local community. So that was quite interesting because it's we have that link between the 3 of them. And it was the first time for some of the neighborhood that we did assessment, that you have someone from the local government going to the ground and to interview and to able to talk with the community members. In the exercise that we did, and actually this was a request from the Nairobi City County, was also to ask the name and the telephone number of the community member or the community leader in order to have direct communications, for example, to help them in the maintenance of the public space later, or they need a person on the ground. No? So it was a good exercise, basically to discuss with the community, but also to have this database of community-based leaders that can help them later to support to the government on the maintenance of the public space. So for us in general, participation is fundamental. We have seen the projects that have this kind of component of participation or involvement of the communities are normally the ones that are more successful. And we have, for instance, other tools as Minecraft, for instance, these are using of a game to co-design the public space. So it's normally what We do is like to involve children and youth and also other community members like to provide ideas on how they should design the open public spaces and also the green spaces. So I think in general, this kind of approach has demonstrated that normally you will have stronger projects while when you have like this kind of participatory approach. Over.
Thank you. Any more?
Yeah, from my side, I can input a bit. First of all, for developing a plan, if it may be a green open space plan or maybe a city-wise plan. One thing need to ensure at first, which is along with the technical inputs, which is the inclusion of public, including all the categories, including children's, including elderly, including women, all the groups. It is mandatory. And another one is inclusion of the political agenda. Like if we can mix up the three, the technical inputs, political agenda, and participation of the citizens, then the plan might be truly successful and it will run for long term. First. Second one is that when we were working for developing the green open space plan in Rajshahi, when we were conducting the survey, especially with the at the household level, we found that unfortunately they became strains that they were asking us that why you were asking me, why you were taking my inputs for you were expert, you can develop a plan. But this is very important for the inclusion of those kind of people, because in some cases we can see the failure in some cities. I do not want to mention some specific cases, but like in the rural area or in the area which is mostly prominent or like a village, there are some expert developed a park which is mostly focused on very spatially for some along with some lots of playing amenities, which is not focused on children, which is not specific focused on. I mean that areas are not open to all group of people. So this kind of challenges we can see in our country, but it is very important because first of all, we need to identify what citizens want to perceive, what is their demand, what is the local needs. So based on this scenario, the city participatory approach is very important to me, and I think we need to emphasize on this issue into the future planning process.
Many thanks. I think, Trudy, you also mentioned a good example where you wanted to, when you developed the app and intended to use it, to give it to provide it to users. No, you want to further explore on this?
Yeah, sure. I think generally public engagement is really, really important when it comes to dealing with invasive pests, damaging tree pests. And there's a lot of reasons why it's important, but I mean, people care about their trees, they care about their street trees or the trees in their properties or in their local parks. And if they start to notice these trees dying, they want to understand why the trees are dying. And they also want to understand if there's anything that they can do to stop the trees from dying. And at the moment, we don't have any approved treatments available for treatment or control in South Africa, but there are some products that people can buy that they're not proven and they don't actually work, and people charge a lot of money for it. So public engagement is important from a point of helping people to understand what they're actually dealing with here, and the importance of appropriately handling infested wood so that this pest doesn't continue to spread unchecked across the country. And we've observed directly where in in urban areas where trees have died, they've been felled and the wood has been moved or sold as firewood, and people will then go into natural areas with campsites and make fires there to cook. And we've now seen this beetle spreading into natural areas as a consequence of the unchecked movement of infested wood. But certainly having something like an app and giving people a way to monitor the trees in that area, that can inform us immensely as well as to where this beetle is present and the kinds of tree species that will potentially be infested. So it's very valuable and potentially quite a powerful tool for us. Thanks.
Many thanks. So after having completed this round, I would like to ask the audience again if they want to share their own experiences or make another comment, ask another question. In addition to that, I already asked the panelists if they have comments and questions to each other's presentation. Any new observation or insight you have gained through the other presentation, or any question to each other. And I think we can start with the panelists and wait for reactions from the audience. At the moment, there is nothing coming up.
Maybe I will start, and I was wondering. I think was quite interesting, like the tip presentation in general. But I was wondering about the next steps, no? Because in like Rumana, like from the academia, Jaber, like from the Urban Let's project, and maybe like a Trudy, like from this development of these tools, like what are the next steps now that you have like this kind of evidence-based and this information, and how you can manage like to scale up a little bit the projects that you are involved.
Thank you for your comment. Yes, the very important one you asked. Yeah, it's really important to always thinking about the next step. So for me, we tried to publish the paper and tried to send. We will try to send the result to the policymakers. We hope they will feel that it should be incorporated in the policies. And from the research aspect, I would like to say that I really enjoyed Zubair's presentation because it is from my hometown, and I can see the difference because when I went to Rajshahi last time, so I can see it's more green. So I will love to expand our research in more areas like Rajshahi and other part of Bangladesh to see an overall view of the whole country and how the national level urban planning should be in future, and how obviously my interest is in cultural ecosystem services, and I will work on that area, just how we can actually integrate this kind of services in the planning and how the green spaces be more suitable for providing these services. And in this way, we may make the residents feel that they are the owner of that space. And when we go for an interview after 10 or 20 years, as Zubair said, that this time they said, why did you ask me for my opinion? Might be their perception will be changed and they will feel more motivated to be engaged in the conversation with the policymakers, because they might respond it in this way because this is the first time might be someone asks them about their opinion. So we actually need to change that scenario, not only for some specific cities, because Dhaka and Rajshahi, two are the bigger cities of Bangladesh, but we have so many towns, smaller towns. So we also need to work for those towns and to see how green spaces in those towns are actually being developed or are actually being planned. Thank you.
Many thanks. Floor is open for more comments.
Yeah, let me share one thing regarding the host's comments on the scaling up of on any pilots or any project. So our responsibility is to make a successful case, to show a successful case to the cities as we are working with the cities, as well as we are trying to connecting with the different financing agencies, so that inspiring from the pilot cases and their successful achievements, so that the city can take by own the initiatives into either it can be individual projects or into their larger projects. So we are trying on this. I hope already I came to know that there are lots of initiatives already taken by the local corporate city authority regarding plantation, regarding increasing the open spaces, increasing, they are planning for setting up some biodiversity parks where it is applicable in terms of the location and connecting to the other neighborhood open space areas. So these are the successful story, and we can see maybe Russia is encouraging to do this because of their historical story of achieving the green perspective. But as well as we can try or pilot this kind of cases or pilots in other cities as well. Especially if I can say that there are some secondary cities in Bangladesh also, which cities do not have much urbanization pressure. So if they can start from the beginning or as of now, they can do lots of contribution in these sectors. But in terms of Dhaka, some populated or urban, some more populated cities like Dhaka, Chittagong, it is quite tough. But authorities are trying to increasing the vegetation and open space along with the partners and other non-government organizations.
And I think with regards to remote sensing technologies, it's starting to be applied more and more widely in plantation forestry settings and also agricultural crop settings to pick up stress in crops and to try and, I guess, troubleshoot. So pick things up early, maybe even before there's symptoms that we can see by looking at the plants with the naked eye. And so to be applying this in an urban forest setting, I think is quite novel. And it is sort of a new area for me to be getting into. So it's a learning curve for me as well, but quite exciting. But also, I guess with the approach that Johannesburg City Parks and Zoo is taking in taking such a collaborative and broad-ranging approach to try and get as good a handle on this problem and looking at all the aspects that are required to, I guess, really fine-tune their management and try and come up with a good implementation plan. I mean, that's really quite admirable, and I think it will help other municipalities throughout the country to follow suit and potentially, look at the steps that city parks have taken to try and deal with similar pest outbreaks. Thanks.
Many thanks. So we are now reaching the last 7 minutes of the session. It went incredibly fast. I would like to ask everybody, panelists, but also audience, so what has been the takeout message or something that inspired you particularly during that meeting? Can everybody share very briefly? Something everybody, for example, felt inspired, or you felt inspired and you would like to learn more or work more about in the future, or something for another presentation that really caught your attention? any panelists want to start? Otherwise, we have a raised hand, I see. Stephen?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and I'm grateful being part of this discussion. I think what I was pleased with, though all the presenters, I was happy with everyone's work, but I like Romana's work. I am an undergrad reading planning in the university, and I want to do my research in relation to ecological sensitive areas, of which the public green areas are part. So I got quite a number of things out of that, which I think will be helpful in my research, in my undergrad thesis. So thank you.
Thank you. Could you also tell us briefly where you are based and which university you are part of? Yes,
I am a Ghanaian, currently studying at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, located in Kumasi, Ghana. And I read land use planning.
Okay, thank you, Stephen.
You're welcome.
Yes, as also including the panelist. Your takeout message.
Maybe Peter, thanks a lot for the opportunity, and maybe like from my side, I think it was quite interesting to see all the variety of research that is coming up on green urban areas, and actually coming from more from the academia, and Romana showing the cultural ecosystem services, and Hubert showing us more this approach, even to go on the detail, to the pre-assessment that I think is quite important, but also the holistic approach, that going from the pre-assessment, but also to influence the green plan. I think that is quite interesting, and actually, Romana was saying, there is some concrete results that is that someone can see in the city. But also, I think what's quite interesting from through this side, going more to the details of how is you are able that these trees has a good quality, and it's to avoid invasive pests. No, so it was quite detailed. So this kind of 3 different approaches, going more from the macro to going to the details of what does it mean to have a green city, and it's now we are aware that it's the importance of green areas from mental and physical health. This is something that we have also experienced during the lockdowns and the COVID-19, this importance of green areas in the cities. And I think these innovative technologies, from the different perspective, I think that they were a very important to take in consideration when we are doing city planning. No, so only to congratulate to the my fellow presenters, and I really enjoy from my side your presentations, and willing to collaborate with you and other and also the attendees of this session.
Thanks, Jose. I can allow one more brief comment now, given the time. Who is raising her hand or his hand?
I could just add maybe, I mean, this is probably not a session I would normally expect to find myself in, but it's actually been really quite eye-opening, and I think important to see the different approaches to collecting information about urban green spaces and priorities, and ways of analysing and looking at that information. So I have found it really, really useful, even if not something that I would normally be diving deeply into. It's great to have this perspective. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Julie. So I'm very sorry, but there is no more opportunity for discussion. We have 30 seconds left, and so Also, I want to express my gratitude, but I don't want to leave without also sharing my reflection, and that is that it was very interesting to reflect on open source tool and innovative methodologies in data analysis, but also maybe a good opportunity for the future would also to think, in addition to that, about co-production and decentralization and question of citizen-led management and monitoring. I remember many years ago, I met an urban planner from Iran, and they are a very dry country in most of the regions. And then the approach was, okay, the local government is too poor and don't have resources to plant new trees in the streets, but they want to encourage the resident and the landowners to plant new trees and plant new plants. That refers a little bit also to the enabling policies and what is the responsibility of the landowners and residents versus the local government. So in cities like Johannesburg, where we see like many millions of trees and urban parks, there is a huge also financial burden on the local government. So this is next discussion during next conference. But for now, I want to thank everybody. It was very inspiring and very informative. And I want to wish you and also all the participants a very nice remaining conference and a lot of inspiration and meetings. And hopefully we can meet in person sometime soon. So thanks a lot and goodbye and see you again.
Goodbye. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter, also for moderating.
Thanks very much.